Hi, I'm not a mental health professional or a therapist or anything like that. I'm just a girly that deals with anxiety, and these are the things that have helped me. The first technique is called brain dumping. I do this in two different ways. One, I write down all the tasks that I need to do, and I'll talk about this after, but my QQ or my emo journal. With the tasks, I write everything that I need to do so it's not weighing on my mind. This was really helpful because when I was at school and at work, all the projects and tasks and of course personal things that I need to do would be overwhelming until I actually got it down on paper. Once I had it on paper, I can physically see what I need to do and then prioritize what's important, what needs to be done right away, versus what can be put off to the side and what could wait. Now my QQ or my emo journal is where I write down my thoughts, my feelings. It just helps me process, especially when I don't know what exactly is making me anxious. It'll help me figure it out. And what I'll do, I'll just continue to write and write my feeling down on paper until I feel like it's all out. And that means if some days are worse than others, I might come back to it multiple times per day whenever I feel that need to, like get it out. And sometimes it looks like a mix. I will write down tasks and it turns out I'm anxious about those tasks and um, I'll start crying about it on paper. Like, I'm serious, it's super emo. I'm not gonna show you what it says, but you can see the, the tear marks bleeding through the paper. So let your heart out, be as emotional as you need to be, and ask a loved one to burn it if you die. Number two, walk. So walking is helpful, as Andrew Huberman talks about on his podcast. As we walk, that forward momentum and the eye movement helps us process agitation. As we walk, there's objects that are moving through our peripherals, and even if it's very minute, our eyes are processing laterally. And this lateral eye movement actually calms down the amygdala, which is famously known as the part of the brain that controls the fight or flight response. And that's typically why you'll feel a lot better after you go for a stroll. In metaphysical terms, the mind follows the body. So by moving our body forward, it helps our mind process and therefore move forward as well, rather than getting stuck and spiraling. Now, I'm sure this is probably controversial in the self-help, self-improvement community or advice, but I recommend doing it without listening to podcasts or audiobooks. One, so that you're aware of your surroundings, of course, but also so that you really just get into the walk. Come back into the present moment. Dr. K, Healthy Gamer GG, he talks about how anxiety is a future-focused mind. So if you are simply focused on the present moment, you take the time to really be in your body and to savor that walk, then it's going to be more helpful for you to process your anxiety rather than being focused on the audiobook or the podcast that you're listening to and trying to make that walk productive per se. Walking is productive if just in silence and listening to the nature sounds or even the cars passing by you. If you're used to listening to something, try it out. Listen to nothing and see how you feel. Compare it to when you do listen to your audiobook or your podcast. See the difference. 3, this might be a little bit odd for some of you, but shaking, like shaking your body. When my anxiety gets really, really bad, I just surrender. I surrender and I shake. Allegedly, I haven't looked up if there's any scientific research on this yet, but animals in nature, if they're getting chased or they experience something frightening, once they're in a safe space, they will discharge that nervous energy by shaking their limbs, shaking their body, and it's been adapted by us humans into a somatic therapy technique. Personally, I find it really helpful to displace that nervous energy, especially if it's really building up where it becomes way too intense and I don't want to hold on to it anymore. And it's also self-soothing. So I like to shake. I work at the core mostly, but you can flail your limbs. Obviously, this is something that you probably can't do in public or if you're at work, but think just like an animal, they do it when they're in a safe space. So if you come home from work, it's been a particularly bad day, go into your bed and give yourself a little, you know, a little shake like a cat that's about to throw up or something. I don't know, do what feels good for you. I don't know, sometimes I don't really need to flail my arms and my legs so much unless it's a super intense day. Sometimes the core is just enough. And what's also helpful sometimes is I'll place my hands on my stomach or on my heart or both at the same time just to help soothe those areas, because typically that's where I personally feel anxiety. So come back to your body. You can try tapping your stomach or tapping your heart as well to try to help soothe. Number 4, to add to that, at all times, I have a weighted blanket on my bed. Similar to shaking, it's self-soothing as it adds compression, compresses your body to help you feel safe and contained, because we can't always get a hug from somebody, you know? So we gotta make use of the tools that our capitalist society, you know, there's benefits to it. We can just go buy a weighted blanket. So one, look for the reviews if you are going to buy it. Mine had a leak very, very early on when I first got it. And I don't know, I don't like the feeling of the beads on my bed, but I digress. You can add the weighted blanket on top of you while you shake. While you add that shake, ooh, for a double whammy, soothing, you are being hugged while you are displacing that nervous energy. Think about if you are having a total emotional breakdown and you have a friend hugging you and your body just, you know, reacting so intensely. It's the same concept, except it's a blanket and it's not alive unless you can pretend. I know, I'm making it sound a lot sadder than it needs to be. But trust me, a weighted blanket is a really great investment. Number 5, hear me out, yoga and meditation. So before you click off because you've heard it all before, the thing about yoga and meditation is that it's a long-term solution. So you're not going to do a yoga class one time or meditate once and then your anxiety is going to magically go away. If anything, if you are already feeling anxious and you try to do yoga or you try to get into a meditation session, whatever you're anxious about is going to come to the forefront. Like if you are doing yoga, probably the whole time you might be focused on whatever's making you feel that way. Especially if you're in meditation, it's definitely probably going to come to the forefront of your mind. So just keep that in mind. But if you are consistent and you continue with your practice, then you'll find that it's going to be helpful in the long term. For example, personally, when I was in school, I was working, and I was I had some abusive people around me. I would have a constant pit in my stomach. And this is something I just thought was normal until one day after practicing yoga and meditation for maybe a year, half a year, suddenly that feeling went away. And the thing is, my situation didn't change. I was still in school, I was still working, and I still had some of those people around me. Yet, because of my practice, it helped to alleviate those feelings, those symptoms, those physical symptoms at least. Yoga is really helpful to, one, get into your body, get into the present moment, and two, to release any tension that you might be holding on to. So we've been talking about processing anxiety. It's really important to do that because if we tend to either avoid it, not think about it, or we try to push it away, it's still there. And it's going to manifest as tension. Tension in the mind, tension in the body. Meditation is helpful for us to learn how to detach from our thoughts, rather than placing meaning or trying to interpret every single thought that we have. It's a practice that helps us become more discerning. So of course, during meditation, you are probably going to have a more difficult time. It'll be a little bit more challenging if it's something that you are first getting into. and you do have an anxious mind or you do have an anxious feeling body, because those feelings are going to come to the forefront. So to help with that, with your meditation, I highly recommend doing a breathwork practice rather than jumping right into trying to clear your mind. This will give you a point of stability for your mind or for yourself to focus on. One that I find helpful when I'm feeling anxious is alternate nostril breathing, or Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. In this practice, you'll breathe through one nostril at a time. The purpose is to bring balance of the mind, balance of the body, balance of the spirit. To practice, find yourself in a comfortable position. If you're in a chair, be sure that your 2 feet are planted on the ground. Or if you're seated on the floor, sit in cross-legged and then bring your left hand to rest on your left knee. Palm is face up. Then bring your thumb and index finger to touch for Gyan Mudra, the hand posture for wisdom. Take an inhale and then exhale. Using your right hand, place your index finger and your middle finger on your forehead in between your brows, slightly above. This is your third eye point. Now, cover your right nostril with your thumb and then inhale through the left nostril. Next, cover your left nostril with your ring finger. Exhale through the right. Stay here with your left nostril covered. Inhale through the right. Cover your right nostril with your thumb. Exhale through the left. That's one cycle. So you can continue inhaling through the left. Cover. Exhale through the right. Now you can do a couple rounds of this if you just need some moments, if you need a moment to bring yourself into balance. Continue this pattern as long as you need, trying for 5 to 10 cycles at first. You can build up to 5, 10, 20 minutes, maybe longer if you're ever so inclined. Personally, I like to end by inhaling through the left and then releasing my hand and then exhaling through both nostrils, and then breathe through both of your nostrils normally. Breathe normally as you would, just so you can take a scan and see how you feel. If you need more invigoration rather than calm, you can try ending by breathing through your right and then ending with exhaling through both nostrils. Experiment, try things out. I'll also turn to this breath before I do anything that makes me nervous, whether I'm about to give a presentation, or maybe I'm going out and meeting new people in a totally new environment. Another breathing exercise that you can do very quickly and easily, where you don't really need to get into a meditative state, is known by, I guess, Andrew Huberman's followers as a physiological sigh. But in my Kundalini practice, we called it superhero breath. They are slightly different. The physiological sigh involves 2 inhales. The first inhale is long and it's deep. Then the second inhale is kind of like a sniff. You are topping off your lungs or topping off that breath, trying to get as much air in as possible. And then a long exhale out the mouth. You can also sigh, I'm assuming. The sighing itself, if you add some vocal cord action, that will help also stimulate the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, very quickly, is really helpful, again, to help calm the fight or flight response. The Kundalini version, it's slightly different. This time you'll take 2 quick inhales through the nose. And then cannon breath, you're going to exhale powerfully out the mouth with an O shape. This type of breath I find really helpful when I start feeling my heartbeat get really heavy and strong, palms are sweaty, mom's spaghetti. I hope these tips are going to be helpful for you to process anxiety rather than avoiding it. Because if you're like me and you deal with chronic anxiety, learning to process was really helpful for me to move forward rather than letting these feelings hold me back. Because, you know, those feelings can be really deliberating, and rather than allowing it to continue to fester and prevent us from moving forward in our lives in the way that we want to, learning to process will help us live life more freely And we can help each other out. Let me know what has helped you, and we can try each other's tips and tricks.
We raw dogging our anxiety here, boys. Let's